Okay, I'm calling to order the Zoning and Land Regulation Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is public comment for any item not listed on the agenda. Anyone here for any item not listed on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on to consideration of minutes. We have the minutes from September 5th.
I'll move minutes. I'll second.
We have a motion to approve and a second of the minutes of September 5th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And September 26th.
I'll move. Second.
And we have a motion to approve and a second for our September 26 minutes. Any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we have our minutes approved. Okay. Next we have budget discussion, Zoning and Land Regulation Committee amendments to the proposed capital budget. Did you have anything, Todd, for capital?
For capital, we have only one capital item for $200,000, and that's continuation of our remonumentation project.
Okay.
It's been the same amount for the last number of years.
Golly, I didn't do my script, but Supervisor Miles is here. So I did call a meeting to order. We had public comment, none on the agenda. I'm Chair Mary Corrigan. Mary Corrigan. Yeah, she's maybe going to come later. Anyway,
more wine.
there you go. This is my third meeting in the last 2 hours. Okay. Supervisor Jerry Bullock, Supervisor Dennis O'Laughlin, Supervisor Patrick Miles. We also have our youth governance members, Aomi Obase and Sam Fisher. We have with us this evening the Director of Planning and Development, Todd Violante, and we also have Zoning Administrator Roger Lane and Assistant Zoning Administrator Dan Everson. And we have, is Brian coming later?
I don't think Brian is going to be here.
And
Kind of.
okay, so maybe. All righty. Again, this is a work meeting. Any items on the agenda from previous meetings we have had public hearings on, and so we will not be taking public testimony on other petitions from previous meetings. Committee members may call upon persons to speak on an agenda item if there are any other questions or concerns. When a petition is called, county staff will update the committee on the status of the petition. The committee members may have concerns or questions after discussion and a decision may be rendered. If a zoning petition is acted upon, it will be placed on the next county board meeting for action, which is October 26th. If a conditional use permit is acted upon, it is the county's final action on the matter. The next ZLR committee meeting is a public hearing on October 24th. Okay, our first agenda items are the ZLR committee's amendments to the proposed 2018 capital budget. Did I say Supervisor Miles? And we've been joined by Supervisor Matano. Okay. Todd, so did you have anything else on the capital budget
On the
items?
capital budget, no. I prepared to walk you through the various elements of the operating budget, but for capital, we only have the $200,000 remonumentation project.
Yes. So we are, again, for those who have arrived late, we're on the capital budget. Any recommendations, changes from the ZLR committee for the capital budget? Supervisor Miles.
I just had a question. No changes. Curious about the carryovers. So we have carryover for the monument, remonumentation. I have to find my file, but I thought there was some other carryover on there. In fact, there's also bond proceeds. I think were listed as carryover as a negative amount. And I was just curious if that's just because we had authorized some borrowing on the county at the county board, and it's just expenses that haven't been paid yet with that borrowing. Is that?
That may very well be the case in terms of how DOA, the Controller's Office, represented that in the budget. If you'd like, I could take a closer look at the carry forward items in the capital and give you a call back and talk about that.
That'd be fine.
The only item for 2018 that's not a carry forward again is the remonumentation project. So
Okay.
I'll take a look at what that may be.
Any other questions on the capital budget? Do we need to have a motion to approve, or just, okay. And then, Chair Corrigan, did you want to speak to us about an item that you're proposed for the operating budget?
It's for the operating budget, yes.
It's our next item.
Okay, I didn't know you wanted to hear from Todd first on this, but on the budget. Pass these around here. Pass them down. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. And I should say, first of all, this wasn't filed within 24 hours, so I'm not asking you to vote on it tonight. It's my rule, so I'd hate to break it. But I wanted to have the chance to come to you tonight and present this because I know the chair is not going to be at the next meeting that you're out of town, so I wanted the chance to present it. This amendment deals with planning in regard to the Alliant Energy Center. And as most of you know, we've been working with the Master Plan Oversight Committee for the Alliant Energy Center, and that process is moving forward. And the committee has made certain recommendations toward master planning for the Alliant Energy Center for the campus itself. And in fact, the county exec put another $100,000 in the budget to aid with that process as we move forward on it. In their recommendations, there was a recommendation to also look at an area plan for outside the campus and to work with the City of Madison, the Town of Madison, the City of Fitchburg, and the Parks Department in the City of Madison, which owns much of the land. And the hope is that those groups would all come together and provide some funding for a area plan, because so much of what we do with the Alliant Energy Center is going to be impacted by what the planning is for land that is around the Alliant Energy Center by the other governments. And likewise, what we do on the campus will impact what they decide to do with that. So the recommendation from the group was to try to go forward with this together, the planning process that we're doing together with this area planning. And this money would put $20,000 through the planning department to aid with that process.
Questions for Chair Corrigan?
Just a quick one. So, will there be any obligation on the part of the department to do any staffing of any of this work?
At this point, I don't see that, but I know the department before staffed this process in the past and has been monitoring the process of what we're doing on the Alliant Energy Center, understanding the impact on the surrounding area. But at this point, I don't see a staffing of this committee by them. But it's a good point that they need to continue to monitor this.
Okay. Any other questions?
Pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a motion that we suspend the rules.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules to take action on this amendment. Discussion?
And I'll just explain. I think it's good that we get this behind us because in the next couple of weeks we're going to be ginning up for a lot of meetings. It's going to be talking about the budget. We don't want this to fall by the wayside. So I'm hoping that we can pass it tonight and then it'll go right to the county board.
It'll go to the finance committee.
The finance committee.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of suspending the rules to take action on this proposed amendment this evening, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Seeing none, we'll take action on the amendment this evening.
I will approve of this budget.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve this budget amendment. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
And Supervisor Montano votes no. Okay. Thank you, Chair Corrigan.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your entertaining the motion. Thanks.
Okay, anything else before we move on? Anything else on the budget? Okay, then we'll move on to, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just
Oh, that's
Before
right,
we,
thank you, Todd, sorry.
Well, yeah, just real quick back, just to give Todd information where I was looking on the capital budget, at least in the PDF file, it's page 28, for the borrowing proceeds question. There's also in there, permanent tax assessment system. Is that software that's being basically that's shared with the Register of Deeds?
That's part of that project. That's the larger project that we had talked about in past years. That's still somewhat on hold. That included our permit tracking system initially, and then our property listing system, and then also the treasurer's tax collection system. So that was the large capital item that had been put into our budget years ago.
Because on the operating side, there's decision items in both planning development done with Register of Deeds for increased costs, contractual costs.
The decision item that you see in this year's budget relates to our contract for general code, or the GCS software, our listing software that we utilized for a number of years. And that's simply a contract amount, an anticipated contract increase of $2,900 for 2018. So that large capital item of 1.4 million or so is one that has not yet been brought to fruition, and one of the larger items related to that is replacement of the treasurer's tax collection system that's included in this capital item. So the way we've approached that over the years, our initial anticipation was quite a large capital project. We've been able to accomplish at least the initial tasks relating to our permit tracking system and our listing system at cost much less than what we had initially anticipated. But we still don't know what that treasurer's component is going to look like, and that's why the capital item remains.
I thought the treasurer's office had decided to stay with GCS and not.
I think for the near term, we had embarked on a process working with the treasurer's office and our office and information management on various ways we could approach that. And I think at this point, the treasurer's office is not ready to move forward to that next step. And I think there is a comfort level with general code. I think the sense from IM and the treasurer's office, I don't want to speak for them, but my understanding is that for now, they're content to continue working with GCS, who also does our listing system for us. So, if we're going to affect that capital budget in any way, that should be a larger discussion with the treasurer's office. But for now, it's a placeholder of something that had been initiated, is still in process, and the remaining component of it is still determined in terms of how, say, the treasurer's office may want to proceed.
Well, that side of it seems like it's going to carry forward for a lot of years.
Yeah, it has been.
Any other questions on the budget? Todd or Amy?
That was a capital item.
Right. Anything else? Todd,
Did you want an overview of our operating budget?
think everyone's good, or questions?
Good.
Okay.
Want to just highlight the major changes, Todd? Or?
Yeah, there actually is a major one.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have
Go for
somebody
it.
else here to talk to us about that as well.
Yeah.
Exec office, so.
Does it warrant the
Yes,
big chair in the middle there?
Oh, yeah, front and center.
All right, front and center. I'd be happy to. So, we have up there on the big screen our department's budget, and that's RPC. We could probably go back to, does everybody have access to the electronic version? I have access, or I brought copies of, hard copies if anybody would
We
like
have-
them.
Yeah.
Hardware here.
So we do have a few decision items, And I thought probably the most methodical and logical way to go about it would be to go right through each one in turn. So, Roger, if you wouldn't mind going to the next page, and it's DI. This is the first decision item in the Records and Support Division. And this is the one that I referenced, the GCS contract increase of $2,900. This is a nominal one. It's part of an already anticipated contract increase with GCS. And then there are two other sort of, I don't want to say non-substantive amendments on the next page, or decision items that relate to all of our divisions, simply relating to personnel cost changes in the Wisconsin retirement system, and a 1.25% wage increase that the county executive has put forward. Go to the next division, Roger, for the planning division. We transferred $2,000 from a couple of other line items, to create a $2,000 amount for the Dane County Housing Initiative Annual Housing Summit. It's been a really successful event. Costs always come up that we don't have a clean way of taking care of. This at least enables us to have some more accurate accounting instead of taking funds out of, say, our printing, stationery, and office supplies line, or some other line. This enables us to track those costs better, so we can adjust it from year to year in terms of how much we might need. But so again, a relatively nominal item. Perhaps the most substantive item in the planning division is the proposal to transfer $45,000 in build program funding. I think most of you are familiar with the build program, the Better Urban Infill and Design program, from our office to the Office of Energy and Climate Change to initiate a new funding program related to economic development and energy efficiency with the local municipalities. So in concept, I think it does, in my opinion, my personal opinion, it does is anticipated to continue a number of the same sustainability-oriented objectives and economic development type of objectives that BUILD was initially conceived to promote. I think BUILD has been a wildly successful program. It's been something that I think one of the hallmarks of our department that's been a really rewarding program. It goes back to 1998 or 1999 when it began. Pam Andros, one of our senior planners, has staffed that program for many years, and certainly available for questions if anybody would like information on BUILD. But I would suffice it to say that it's something that we certainly have supported, and it's been a great program. There's been an excellent multiplier of every dollar spent on BUILD that has resulted in economic growth and benefit in the local jurisdictions, be it a town, city, or village. However, the funding over time has gone down, and we've seen a bit of a lessened interest in the program. And we could speculate as to the numbers or the reasons for that. We've seen fewer applications coming in from the municipalities, and we could speculate, our best speculation as staff as one of the primary reasons is that we've touched a number of the jurisdictions throughout Dane County. They've benefited from these planning dollars, and they've got plans in place. However, what they seem to be looking for is implementation dollars and ways to implement the plans that were funded by BUILD. One of the best local downtown examples, or close to downtown, is the East Washington Avenue Corridor Plan was funded in significant part by BUILD money. And we're seeing the city of Madison pursuing a number of those corridor infill development projects rooted in part on the BUILD funded plan. So some of the other smaller jurisdictions don't have the funding resources that Madison has, but they are poised to implement their BUILD plans. So another example in terms of the declining numbers is this current cycle where we have $45,000 available and we received only 2 applications from the jurisdictions. So we'll still have a surplus or a leftover amount of about $15,000 in unallocated funds for this year. So I think that prompted the discussion to look at build, to look at the funds and see, is there something, a contemporary objective that we have that's still somewhat in keeping with the build program ideals, but is more of a current pressing issue. And there seemed to be a lot of potential in the climate area. So may I introduce, I think many of you may already know, Keith Riefel, the Director of the Office of Energy and Climate Change. And Pam and I have met with Keith, and we've talked about the relationship, the common denominators between this concept of the Energy Efficiency Economic Development Fund and the build program, and there seem to be a lot of common objectives. And I think that certainly both programs, in my perspective as staff, are laudable. Both are efforts that, as a department, we're absolutely willing to contribute to in any way we can. And ultimately, it comes down to you as decision makers how at least the legislative branch of government wants to allocate those funds based on the executive's start to the budget process. So I'll defer to Keith in terms of what questions you may have about the possible funding framework and objectives of how such a program could work.
Go ahead, Supervisor
Yeah,
Ross.
thanks for the background, Todd, and just for committee members' information, Supervisor Laughlin, I think, probably chaired that advisory committee from the inception of the program.
Bill,
Yeah,
about 8 years.
and I chair the current incarnation of it, but
Much
and-
better before.
Well, after the economic downturn, it did impact us. Plus, there was a time that we had much more significant amount of dollars in that program. Some of it we were getting from CDBG, and it turned out that we weren't actually allowed to use CDBG funds in that way, so ended up being totally dependent on GPR. And that contributed to some of the decline in funding, and that might be some of what has also created a decrease in interest in the program, because our grant amounts are pretty small now. So, but it also could be because after the economic downturn, people had these plans in place and didn't have the means to move forward with them, and that's where they are now as the economy is picking up. So, Keith, thank you for coming. I would like to hear and I think the committee would benefit from hearing about what's been flushed out as far as program goals that will be carried over from build, but I guess enhanced or added to or changed. What are some examples of types of projects that may be funded? One of the things that was always that we went through each cycle with build was informing municipalities that these aren't bricks and mortar, these aren't grants for bricks and mortar, it's for planning purposes, redevelopment kind of things. So how does that transfer into energy efficiency type planning projects?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I certainly appreciate it. So I have taken a look at the build program. The county executive asked me to, see how we might apply some of the focus of my office in terms of energy specifically to this program, and maybe make it more current and maybe most importantly increase or maximize the economic development benefits. And I think, in many ways it would be very consistent with the historic program. That is to say, it would be something that we would be offering to municipalities. We would see municipalities applying for it. It would be funding for services along the lines of planning, although maybe expanding that to things like energy analysis and potentially energy audits and maybe retro commissioning, those types of analysis and planning services as opposed to capital investments with a fund of this size. And I think there's, you know, while the world has changed maybe in terms of focusing on downtowns and urban infill and that sort of thing, and that has become many of the municipalities, the cities and villages in Dane County, you know, have been taking a look at that and taking advantage of the build program specifically to do that. The energy world has changed too, and energy costs have gone up significantly. And so if we look at some of the economic development opportunities in terms of the ability to save energy, to you know, keep costs down, and at the same time realize a wide range of community benefits from health benefit outcomes to, you know, reduced emissions to and again, a lot of these, as Todd said, are some of the core sustainability features, you know, in the build program today. And I did actually take a look at those, at the goals, at again, the request of the county executive, and I have a couple memos that I can share with you in terms of my take on how those goals might be tweaked a little bit. But to be honest, a lot of them I thought, you know, would just pretty much stay the same. Things like attracting private investment, improving the lives of low to moderate income, living in the community, encouraging improvements that promote healthy living, creating sustainable communities by promoting economic development benefits, but some of them just adding kind of a focus on energy-related economic development. And to use the example that Todd used, if you think about the East Washington corridor, so the difference here might be that rather than, you know, just planning all aspects of a downtown development, here a focus would be on the energy aspects of that development, which could mean things like more geothermal, you know, systems which are highly efficient for heating and cooling, and again, over the long term save the building owners a lot of money. Could mean solar panels on some of those buildings. It could mean in certain places in Dane County where there are a lot of vulnerable facilities or critical facilities, it could mean in doing planning for a microgrid which, you know, adds to the resiliency of those communities by protecting those vulnerable and critical facilities. So, specifically, you know, there were traditional planning efforts where this could be very similar with just more of an emphasis on energy. There's different types of energy analysis that the program could be used for, and again, audits and retro commissioning is a particularly interesting option where you're really going in and you're looking at how buildings have performed versus how they were meant to perform in terms of all the equipment, the operations, and it's very attractive because there are really immediate cost savings through the energy savings as a result of that retro commissioning. So anyway, those are just some of the types of the programs or types of the projects, I guess, types of planning and analysis that could be done with if we changed it to have this energy focus.
Supervisor Miles.
So, but the grants would still be full, the audience for the grants would still be to municipalities, not to...
Right. I think as is, I'm sure the case now, it would be the case in many instances where while it's municipalities that would be making the applications for the grants, some, and in probably a lot of cases, most of that funding would be passed through to consultants or experts in energy fields that would be hired, you know, to do analysis, to help with planning, those sorts of things. So I think, you know, some of that money would end up, you know, with private businesses, of which we have a plethora of really outstanding energy consulting businesses in Dane County.
Right, but I guess what I'm getting at with that question is that the grants wouldn't be going towards an individual business or property owner
Right.
to do, say, an energy audit of their business. It'd be more, taking the East Washington corridor as an example. It's a corridor. It's an area of a community that the municipality did some planning effort towards, or some of the build grants have been for feasibility studies, but it's for an area, not for a specific property or business. So is that what you're envisioning?
Yeah.
Is that it'd be, say again, going to the energy audit example, that'd be an evaluation or baseline measure of energy usage for an area or a set of buildings in an area?
It could be single larger government buildings. It could be an area, a suite of buildings, something like that. But yeah, the way I guess we've talked about it, envisioned it, it would still, municipalities would still be the audience in terms of who would be, who the fund would be open to apply for. I guess you could expand that. I think there's a lot of advantages to municipalities. I mean, in terms of their planning role, also in terms of obviously when you're saving energy dollars and saving costs, then you're in turn saving tax dollars in the case of municipalities. So I think, that's the way the program was originally set up, I think for very good reasons. And yeah, we weren't contemplating changing that.
I did have a conversation with both Todd, Pam, all three, Keith, Pam, and Todd about this. And Todd informed me as well that planning development will still, so there'll be, I guess, a subset of the council, environmental council, or climate council, I should say, that will comprise the governing body oversight of this, but will be staffed to some degree by planning development.
Yeah.
We've certainly offered that with Keith being a one-person office at this point in time, and given that we've already been staffing this effort as the build program, we certainly have capacity to continue that. So we've offered that to continue that sort of administrative support capacity to whatever extent is needed.
Which I greatly appreciate. So yeah, it would be perhaps a combined effort in terms of the staffing. But in terms of the committee, I mean, again, envision it sort of working the same way that the build program does today. We thought because one of the main functions of my office has been to bring together a climate council which has a lot of expertise in the energy area that we could pull from that council. I mean, it's very large and way too large for something like this, but we could pull find expertise on that council. But as I said to Supervisor Miles yesterday, it may also make a lot of sense to have some carryover from the current committee that oversees it, just to have that consistency and that historical knowledge to keep it there. And this is a work in progress, I guess, in terms of developing it, as you'll see from the memos that I'll give you here.
Yeah, and wondering if there's still some fleshing out of goals and objectives for the program and structure that probably Pam can provide some good insight.
Absolutely. I mean, I mentioned yesterday too that our focus has maybe changed a little bit just over the last week, literally in terms of not as much of a focus on climate. Oh, I just had 5 there, Todd. Sorry, I probably have a couple more. A focus on energy projects, maybe more so than climate. But again, just to the point about this is a work in progress, so we'd welcome the input, Supervisor Miles, for sure.
Okay. Other questions? Anything else on the capital budget before we move on to our next agenda? Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next are zoning map amendments and conditional use permits from previous meetings. We have rezone petition 11,186. Kenneth L. Yes. Todd?
Yeah, there was one other item in our in the zoning division. That's a notable item, a significant item.
Okay.
And that's, so we're looking at the 6 towns
Okay, thank you.
in the zoning division. So that was the primary discussion item, I think, or decision item for the planning division. Now, in the zoning division, we're looking at projecting out with 6 towns withdrawing from county zoning. We're projecting a loss of roughly $80,000 in 75 to 85, we'll say, in projected revenue shortfalls from permitting fees from developments in those towns. So we need to offset that, and we've been anticipating this for the last couple of years, year and a half. So we do have a vacant zoning inspector position that we've held vacant, to eliminate that vacant position to offset this revenue shortfall. So that's this decision item here, eliminating that vacant zoning inspector position. So right now, we're on an even keel, but we're going to have to play it by ear to see what 2018 brings and how ultimately market variations affect our revenues and our workload, and we'll play that by ear. So if at some point we find that the workload is increasing dramatically beyond where we're at right now and zoning staff are being stretched, then we'll certainly keep you apprised and would pursue addition of a position in the future if it was so warranted. But for now, I think this is something we've been anticipating and working toward. It's a significant item in our zoning division for sure, and I felt it was worth commenting on that. Otherwise, I think those are the primary decision items. That's our budget. Otherwise, it was a relatively status quo budget, and
Okay.
Quick question, Todd. Townships are going to pull out, 6 of them, and I strongly believe that they'll have questions, issues they won't be able to resolve and may come back to your department. How will that be handled?
That's an excellent question. We're anticipating in fact, we have it built into the ordinance amendment.
Yes, we haven't put a lot of money behind it, but we've created a line. They're basically going to, it'll be like the planning fee for service.
It's the $2,000.
We will be charging them. We're going to be charging them by the hour for
By the
providing
hour,
that
okay.
service.
How much an hour?
It depends on the staff providing the information.
Okay.
It'll be based on the fully encumbered rate of the staff person, and so you'll see.
Item 3.
Yeah, it's the top item there. It's
Is there any markup in that rate?
actually no, it's the second item, P and D Zone 3.
Too nice a guy, mark it up, double it.
Mark it
No,
up?
there is no market, like markup. The,
Yeah.
fully encumbered just means the benefits and everything. And
So
we're
you're
already
just
paying overhead.
Salaries and bennies.
That's right.
So
That's what
you
we
don't
mean by-
feel it's appropriate to mark up a little bit?
We can round it
10%?
up.
We could charge market rate for planning services.
Market rate would be significantly more than even
Well,
our
I
fully
mean,
encumbered
don't you-
rate.
I mean, I'm not trying to micromanage here, but don't you feel that would be appropriate?
That's not how we proposed it. But ultimately, it's subject to,
But when you charge, you could say, we're charging this much, and realize you would be paying, for example, double this if you were paying
Right.
non-government employee.
I mean, you could send out a memo saying, here's, if you need our services in the future, here are our rates.
yeah, and I think that's what we anticipate doing, is having a rate sheet
Mhm.
based on employee classification and in the job titles. Typically, in the public sector, when we're accounting for fees, we typically charge our costs. We charge our fully encumbered rate and the time that we put into it.
And it's for someone that's using your services year-round, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So-
And those towns are paying into the levy versus those who say they're removing it. So I hear you.
But
These
we would
towns-
welcome those 6 towns back in as well.
Theoretically, they've indicated that they want there to be a transfer of levy. And we'll have to see how that whole issue plays out. But ultimately, if they are not paying into the county levy, that then changes our conventional rate
Absolutely. Yeah.
model.
Okay.
So I think that's a fair thing to discuss, and we'll have to see how that whole issue plays out. But that may be the basis for it.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I guess I would just chime in, we're not gonna do all the things, you know, this is helping them do things that they're gonna do, and it may, we see that ideally, that's gonna taper off. But we're not doing your density studies, we're not doing your plan upgrades for DAPCAP, we're not doing that. So, that's your new consultant or whoever you're contracting with, that's their job. So this is a subset of the things that we do.
There has been the explicit decision not to contract back to the towns for the services that we previously provided. But there will inevitably be things perhaps coming from their own consultants to inquire how things had been done in the past or what processes or systems we use to do X, Y, and Z. So there almost inevitably will be things that we'll be providing. So with that decision item, I think we'll have a system in place for doing that.
Anything else, Todd? Just a second. Anything else, Todd? I just want to know if you had anything else. So when
No,
I call
I
on
think-
someone, that really truly will be the last time.
I think
So-
we've got a couple of nominal line item, decision items, some transfers. We are moving forward an ordinance amendment that changes our how we handle communication tower conditional use permit applications. We're reducing that fee
We have that
to $1,100.
on our
Yeah, it's
agenda.
on your agenda.
Yeah.
So we can explain the rationale behind that, but that's the only remaining item that affects the zoning division. And thus, that concludes our department budget.
Supervisor Miles, you had another question?
A few back on this whole fee for the towns that are opting out. One is, did I understand you correctly that the actual rate that the department will charge will be dependent upon the decision? I'm assuming it's still being deliberated on by DOR, Wisconsin DOR, as far as whether or not they get the shift of the levy. Is that right?
I think right now, we're anticipating when we put that rate sheet together for 2018 that we will be charging our fully encumbered staff costs. My point with the levy issue is that if we want to charge more than that, pending the outcome of how DOR rules on the levy transfer, may be a prompt for us to increase those rates. If those 6 towns are not paying into the county levy like the other towns, there may be an incentive for us to exceed that rate. But I think that's something we still have to think through and understand our options better. But I think right now we're anticipating charging our fully encumbered rate.
Well, I would argue that if DOR determines that there isn't that levy shift, so they're still paying into the levy, but that's just a general fund levy. It's not something that's segregated to just zoning services, so that it shouldn't affect the decision of what the rates are that you charge. Your costs are your costs, regardless of what's coming in through the levy. So that's just my 2 cents worth on that. Is there an ordinance amendment? Did I hear somebody say there's an ordinance amendment in process regarding this fee to establish this fee, or no?
No cell towers.
Well, I know there's that one, but I thought at the start of the conversation about this one that there was an ordinance amendment.
The controller felt, there's no need for an ordinance amendment. We already have the ability to do that. We do that in the planning division.
I thought all the fees had to be established in the ordinance, that's all.
Planning fee for service, it works the same way.
Yeah, I think Pam is
So
correct.
there's already an existing planning fee
Yes.
for service. This is just saying because of these 6 towns, there may be an increase in that.
Right,
And
and
that
if you think
existing
about
fee.
it, it's not gonna, we we need to choose a division for it to go to, because the services, the hours are gonna come from all three of our divisions, so it's a place to put it. As far as the authority to do it, we already have that.
All right.
We had initially anticipated including it as an ordinance amendment, but Chuck opined and indicated to us that we did not need to have an ordinance amendment to do that.
All right, well, I mean, if there's an existing fee for it to go in there, that's fine. But I understand the sentiment about maybe we should be charging more, but we should probably check with court counsel, because I don't know that we're able to
Okay, well, we're
charge
not,
beyond what is.
we're not making any decisions on that tonight, so.
And then just moving on budget, is there any communication with registered deeds? From
There
their,
isn't anything.
from their thing,
There's
just
a-
the
The register of deeds asked, and I said there wasn't anything, she wasn't presenting anything, so I didn't ask her to come.
And the decision items seem like they're all consistent with the 1.25 increase and so forth on salary.
Any other questions, concerns, anything? Moving on.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
Okay, again, this is a work meeting, but we do have the representatives of the rezone and the CUP, including Mary Beth Petrotil, who is here and will speak in support should we want to call on her. Roger?
Yes, this petition was postponed at the September 26th Zoning and Land Regulation Committee. It was postponed due to public opposition, and to see if the town would be willing to reconsider their denial. Within your packet, there is a response from the town. I did send a letter out asking them if they were interested in reconsideration. They sent the letter back basically stating that the town board was very diligent in their consideration. They did take into account the zoning in the area, the impact that the business would have on the area, and they would not be reconsidering action at this time. County staff has sent, county staff has received a letter from the applicant requesting this petition to be postponed. Another item that is associated with this rezoning petition is a conditional use permit. As stated on the September 26th meeting, zoning staff is suggesting that the committee take no action on this conditional use permit, given that the limited family business is not listed as a conditional use in the rural home zoning district, which is the current zoning of the property.
Okay, I'm going to move postpone.
I'll second that for discussion, and I would like to ask the petitioner a question.
Go ahead.
If you would like to come up, please.
Supervisor Bowling, I'm Mary Beth Peranto, representing the petitioner.
Right,
Didn't know
that's
if you
fine.
wanted to hear directly from Mr.
No,
Burson.
you're basically their voice. Why do they want to postpone it?
Well,
Given the
based on
evidence.
advice of counsel, I've reviewed the minutes and the previous proceedings from the town of Burke, and it's my opinion that the recommendation for disapproval on the rezone was inextricably bound to the discussion on the CUP. It is literally half a sentence tacked on to the end of a motion at the end of a very lengthy discussion of the 6 standards. The stated reason is that it's not consistent with other properties in the area, and there is manifestly no evidence of that unless you're only talking about the next door neighbor. I think this has gone down a rabbit hole driven by the desires of the next door neighbor. I would very much appreciate the opportunity to correct the record before the Board of Adjustment in the pending appeal. I understand that'll be heard on November 16th. Because these items are typically considered in tandem, and because I think that this so much went off the rails, I think that in fairness to the applicant, the matter should be considered in tandem after we have a chance to appeal administratively.
So this is going to the Board of Appeals, no matter what.
And just-
Yes, that appeal was filed yesterday.
Other questions? Okay.
Well, actually, for staff, if, so, maybe if you turn first. So the question before the Board of Adjustment is strictly on the zoning
Conditional use permit.
decision. Is
But
correct?
that really did drive the determination on
I
both issues.
understand. So but I'm just trying to just figure out if there'd be anything coming back to this. So if it's strictly on the zoning, Board of Adjustment say reverses the town's decision, then does it come back here for the zoning committee to make a determination on the zoning?
Well, there's two separate processes. I would have to disagree that they're both connected together. In order to apply for a conditional use permit, you do need to have zoning secured. Okay, the current zoning is rural homes. The town denied the rezone petition based on the town comprehensive plan. They found it to be inconsistent with the town plan.
I would
It
have
is
to
also-
take
it is
exception to that.
also-
In fact, they didn't
Ma'am,
mention the
we're going to listen to him right now. Thank you.
But anyway, the town recommended denial of the rezoning petition. It's before the Zoning and Land Regulation Committee for a recommendation to the full county board. That's when the rezoning changes or does not change. I have wrote a letter to the applicant's attorney stating that the conditional use permit is a moot point because the zoning of that property has not been secured in order to obtain a conditional use permit.
Okay, so can you help me understand, what is the question before a Board of Adjustment?
I don't know. You would have to ask the applicant's attorney because I'm somewhat confused.
The Board of Adjustment is empowered by statute and ordinance to take all of the powers of the body from which the appeal is taken. So it has the power to essentially overturn the town, and can do so after a full contested case hearing. So there's actually opportunity for cross-examination of
Right,
witnesses.
I understand that. My question is, what is the appeal? What is the question?
The question is, so there are a couple of, there's actually 4 standards for this kind of review of an administrative decision. One is whether the town kept within its jurisdiction. That's obviously not an issue here. One of it has to do with substantial evidence. Was the evidence, taking the evidence as a whole, was it a reasonable decision? And also, did the decision of the board reflect its will and not its judgment? That's sort of a pre-judgment type question. So on those last 2 issues, that's the basis for
But
the
is it the decision, the town's decision on the zoning? Or
on the
both
conditional
the
use
zoning?
permit. The rezone is not eligible under the ordinance for appeal, and it's not a final decision because the town doesn't have veto power over rezones.
Right. So you're trying to get the decision overturned on a CUP for zoning. But Roger's, just a statement of fact here, that Roger's point is that existing zoning on there doesn't list the suggested,
A limited family business is prohibited in the rural
It's-
home zoning district.
because it's not listed as a conditional use under the existing zoning.
So from my perspective, I'd like to keep this administratively within the county. If the conditional use permit decision can be revisited and we get a favorable decision, then it seems to me we should consider the rezone in tandem. But if indeed we cannot overturn the conditional use permit decision, the rezone is moot. And so I don't understand why we would
Well,
get to that.
Zoning comes first. But
Yes, zoning opens the door for conditional use permits.
Roger. Your recommendation on both the rezone and the CUP, your recommendation to the ZLR committee is no action.
Recommendation to postpone the rezoning petition at the applicant's request, and then just take no action on the conditional use permit, because that was the decision that was at the September 26th.
Okay, and so right now, we have a motion and a second to postpone the rezone. For further discussion,
Question for Roger. So in your overview, did you indicate that it was the staff's recommendation to postpone
on rezone.
on the rezone? Yeah.
The original or
Your most recent.
most recent one, yeah, to postpone, because the applicant, so the Wisconsin statute says, as soon as the action is available to the zoning regulation committee, the zoning and regulation committee should take action on the petition.
Okay.
At the applicant's request to postpone, I see no objection to that, and let it take its course.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to postpone. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the rezone is postponed.
Does that have to be a motion to take no action? Because we had a motion last time.
That doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, if nobody
No
says
action.
anything, that has the same effect, but
Yeah.
whatever you want to do, you want to say nothing, or does someone want to make a motion to take no action? Okay,
May I ask a procedural question?
of Roger when we're done, or Todd, or, but anyway, I guess, what is your question?
I'm wondering if the committee can make a motion to table to a date certain.
No,
It comes
I
up
don't want
at-
that commitment.
At every meeting.
So I'm going to go on with our recommendation. We're not taking any action unless someone makes a motion. I don't see anyone making a motion. We had our public meeting where we discussed our potential action at that night. Tonight, we have voted to postpone on the rezone. You have asked us, we have correspondence asking us to postpone it. We have postponed it, and we're not taking action unless I hear anything else from committee members. Hearing none, we're taking no action on the CUP. Okay.
My question was, does this come up on every agenda then?
No.
No,
Here, okay.
it will not come back up until we're ready to have something done. Thank you. Plats and certified survey maps.
Yeah, the only one before you is a preliminary plat of the town of Middleton, Tumbledown Farm. This consists of 41 residential lots with 6 outlots, a little over 50 acres. Current zoning is A1 agricultural. There is no associated rezone petition with this plat. Staff is recommending the following conditions that would be applicable in approving this preliminary plat. You should have the memo that was prepared by Kurt Kodal that kind of identifies that there are no major conflicts with the county comprehensive plan. As far as just kind of a summary, the land use property is planned for rural development, transitional, and the Dane County comp plan. Rural development and transitional areas is identified. So with that said, I've kind of outlined kind of the standard conditions with regards to with this plat. All streets, should be noted as dedicated to the public. They are. Proposed street names are to be reviewed with respect to Chapter 76. The only one that needs to be reviewed is this Legacy Oak Trail, which is pending. Outlots 3, 4, 5, and 6, I do need a little clarification from the committee with regards to discretion of requiring a waiver from Chapter 75 with regards to the lot frontage requirement, or what we've done in the past is just a note placed on the final plat before it gets recorded that prohibits any type of development. Outlots 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 are subject to public recreational trail easements, and then compliance with erosion control and stormwater is to be required. So,
I'll recommend approval with the conditions, and one of them is the note, right, on the final plat?
sure.
I'll second a quick question.
Go ahead.
The notice regarding road frontage for those outlots, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Other questions? We have a motion and a second for conditional approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And we have conditional approval. Okay, next is a resolution on incorporating equity questions into county agendas. you've had a chance to see this proposal. The bottom line is to ask the questions of who benefits, who's burdened, who does not have a voice at the table, and how can policymakers mitigate unintended consequences. And the goal is that this would be on letterhead for the agendas so that those thoughts are in our minds as we deliberate.
I'm gonna move.
I was going to move approval. Or adoption.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Discussion?
Yeah. I just hope that every time we make a decision, that we've always, some way, shape, or form, had this substance in our mind. I certainly don't vote to make somebody rich. I don't vote to piss off somebody. I vote based on the facts. So I hope, I don't know why we need this, but I'll support it.
Other discussion on the resolution? Supervisor Matano.
I'm sort of the mindset of Supervisor O'Laughlin. I always describe what I do on zoning as being a lot different from what other committees do. And it's sort of like we're kind of in a, almost, legally we're in a quasi-judicial setting for CUPs, but we're in something like that for zoning petitions as well. So like where we just had the discussion where the applicant feels like they're being deprived of something they want, feel justified to have. And so it's a bit, in terms of people of different racial composition and such, it doesn't really apply to whether or not Mr. Paris, was it, gets a limited family business on
Bertha.
The seller was Paris.
Oh, okay, good. So it sort of doesn't compute, but like Supervisor O'Laughlin will say, like, okay, whatever.
So I hear you, and as I said, I am one of the co-sponsors on this. When it says develop a masthead, so it's not, when I first saw it, I was like, are we going to have to say that every time? Every petition, but it's on the agenda, and just a little reminder. Other questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Next is Pam, is not here anymore. Engineering fees, are you going to do it, Todd?
Yeah, I think this one's relatively straightforward. We're simply modifying our fee structure for communication tower or CUP applications. And it's, there is an element of in our current fee structure, I believe we charge $3,000 or $3,100 for a CUP for communication towers. Most of that we pass through to our RF engineering consultant, and the cost of those reports are $3,000. So we also happen to spend, like on mineral extraction petitions, a disproportionate share of our time on these petitions. They're often controversial. There's lots of back and forth with the applicants and the towns, and we invest a lot of staff time in it. And we're simply not charging a fee that recoups our cost. So we're disaggregating the cost. The fee for the engineering, RF engineering, is simply a pass-through to go to the consultant. The $1,100 reflects our collective staff time on these types of communication tower applications. State law also prohibits us from exceeding $3,000 in costs for application fees, and we're trying to make it evident that our fees are actually lower than $3,000. But we are charging an amount for extraordinary expertise, and that should be separate from the application fee that recovers our time investment on it as an agency. So it's simply breaking out those two things. The other items that you see are sort of obsolete carryovers from the Chapter 91 amendments a number of years ago in our farmland preservation efforts and requirements, stat cap requirements. So we're just cleaning up those parts of the ordinance that we noticed should be tweaked a little bit in our fee structure.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And it's approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I hope you had a chance to look at the meeting schedule. I did. I didn't see anything. I was able to put it into my calendar other than September.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate with the
Yeah.
second Tuesday and fourth Tuesday. The only two months are September and December, and I am suggesting that we have just one meeting on September and December, and they fall on September 17th. As you can see, all the ones in red are the holiday ones, and then December 18th.
I thought it was 11th.
December...
Yeah. We'd stay with the 11th. So that one's actually like, but
yeah,
we just have one
December...
meeting. Yeah. It's just September. That's odd. Well, September's odd because
Yeah.
we're meeting on Monday. December, just one meeting.
It would provide a little more time in between meetings in November and December. And that's the only point why moving it to the 18th.
Oh, so you wanted to move it to the
If December
18th? Oh, I
11th is okay too, just the September 17th one is Monday.
We're going to move approval on
Okay.
Just for
Terrific.
clarification, you're saying December 18th.
December 18th, yes.
Okay, great.
That moved to December 18th.
your great work.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second to approve the meeting schedule. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed? It's approved. Okay, our last item is the discussion of youth governance members attending other county committees. And the reason this is on here is, as I have had to explain a number of times, you've probably heard me, ZLR, for example, we don't take the vote of the student governance program members because literally it's been used against this committee at the Capitol, saying that we allow students to vote but not towns, which is mixing completely, apples and oranges. But anyway, so the thought was of people, extension and executive committee was to research the possibility of youth governance members being able to attend other meetings, not just standing meetings. So, your thoughts on this proposal? Go ahead.
I just question why does it have to be anything in here? I mean, they're citizens like anybody else that can go to
Yeah.
any committee meetings. So.
But actually, instead of just being assigned to standing committees, as they are now, that they could be assigned to other committees.
As in multiple committees?
Or instead of.
If the issue is, as a youth governance member, you want to vote, that's one issue. But as far as knowledge that you can use in your life down the road, just because you're not voting here doesn't mean anything. You're learning a lot more in this committee, because I've been on all of them, okay? I can tell you right now, this committee, you'll learn a hell of a lot more than you would if you were on highway and transportation or personnel, finance, and all of that. And I think my colleagues would agree with me.
Do you have questions
You
about
better.
or recommendations for either of you? No thoughts?
I try not to come up with an age joke for you.
Okay, anything else on the youth governance? Yay or nay, or just go ahead?
How do you feel about it?
Yep, I just asked that.
Do you feel you're learning a lot here?
Yeah, I do. I like just observing, so I think it's pretty cool. But
Okay.
it might be also cool to like
Good.
see other processes and how to
Other committees?
Yeah.
You can go there anytime. Sure.
Okay. So we can just not take any action or just do whatever you want?
Well, it's listed as discussion, so it's not an extension there.
Pardon?
The agenda item says discussion.
There you go.
So by definition, we don't take action.
Great. Anything else?
Move adjourned.
Move adjourned. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Nice meeting you, Jeff.
Hey, she was just like